Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I am bringing you another analysis as part of my VGC 2015 individual Pokemon analyses series, where I basically cover one Pokemon in the 2015 format and tell you everything you need to know about that Pokemon. I've already done two on Cresselia and Bisharp, so if you're interested in learning more about those Pokemon, definitely check it out and I'll link those in the description below. But today we're talking about Sylveon, which is one of the most common Pokemon in the 2015 format right now. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So first I'll look at its base stats. It's got 95 in HP, 65 in attack, 65 in defense, 110 in special attack, 130 in special defense, and 60 in speed. Now its base stats don't look very impressive. I think the 95 in HP and 130 special defense is pretty good and makes surviving special attacks really simpler even without much investment. 65 defense unfortunately is very frail and it makes it surviving attacks, physical type attacks, pretty difficult, especially attacks like Iron Head from Bisharp and Mawile. So you'll see later on that even with investment, it is pretty difficult to survive common physical attacks. A 110 in special attacks average, it's not amazing, but it's also not terrible, and 60 in speed is quite mediocre. So why use Sylveon if its base stats are kind of underwhelming? Well, the main reason is basically Hyper Voice. Sylveon is also one of the best Fairy type Pokemon in the game, and Fairy types are excellent in VGC because of its type coverage and the ability to switch into Dragon type attacks, which is one of the most common attacks or types in VGC. So you've got the deadly combo of Pixelate and Hyper Voice, and Sylveon is one of the best Hyper Voice users, if not the best Hyper Voice user in VGC 2015. As because of its great natural bulk, especially in special defense, it's really rarely one-hit KO'd other than from super effective Steel type attacks. It instantly puts on offensive pressure, and you heavily punish switches with Hyper Voice. So there's so many cases where if you lead Sylveon and your opponent's Pokemon can't really take a Hyper Voice, you're basically guaranteed a lot of free damage immediately. So it puts on pressure right away, which is really scary, and you basically, if you're playing against it, you really have to be careful because otherwise it can just run through your team. But being Fairy type and having access to Hyper Voice and Pixelate in itself just makes it an amazing Pokemon and kind of makes up for its average base stats. So you may be wondering what the common Sylveon build is like. Well, they're almost always modest to maximize damage output. Occasionally you'll see Quiet for Trick Room, or Timid actually to speed creep, though with Timid you probably want to run Choice Scarf as well to outspeed Pokemon like Garchomp and Kangaskhan. So most run a plus special attack boosting item. Choice Specs is by far the most popular, but even Pixie Plate and Life Orb are used as well. So those three are by far the most common, but occasionally you'll see other items like Citrus Berry and Life Orb. You should expect your opponent to basically spam Hyper Voice. Like 99% of the time the Sylveon's going to be using Hyper Voice. The other 1% is going to be using moves like Shadow Ball and Helping Hand, but Hyper Voice is really the main selling point of Sylveon. It's often easy to survive physical attacks, namely Kangaskhan's returns, as I'll go into more later, but you should definitely expect some defense investment. Because you're not going to be putting much in speed, so the remainder is probably going to go in HP, defense, and special defense, a split between those three. So here's a move pool discussion. Hyper Voice is by far the most common move. After it follows Shadow Ball, Psyshock, Hidden Power, both fire and ground, Protect, Hyper Beam, Quick Attack, Moonblast, Sleep Talk, and Helping Hand. Now, Hyper Voice is the move you'll be using the most, but depending on the Sylveon you're running, you'll probably see a combination of the rest. Shadow Ball is kind of nice to hit ghost types like Gengar and Aegislash, though you actually have to be careful because a lot of Aegislash now carry weakness policy, so you don't want to Shadow Ball into a Aegislash in defense form and give it the free +2 special attack, but it's still a decent option. Psyshock allows you to hit Pokemon like a Moongus. Hidden Power, depending on which one you want, can help beat those pesty Steel types. Protect, obviously. Hyper Beam is actually really nice because of Pixelate, and it's just a really strong attack. It can catch your opponent off guard and can pick up one-hit KOs. It's also the strongest special attack you can get and can avoid Wide Guard as well, which Hyper Voice often is. It's used to beat Hyper Voice. A Quick Attack just to pick off some damage. I've seen it on Assault Vest variants, especially Marcus Stadters, aka Yoshi. He ran it on his Sylveon set with Assault Vest. Moonblast, Sleep Talk, Helping Hand, all kind of situational. Helping Hand's really nice on those support sets though, with like Citrus Berry namely. So this is the Citrus set I've actually been running for a long time. The EVs were actually taken off a Japanese team from a while ago that my friend lent to me, but it's basically a decent general spread. The HP and defense investment allows you to survive Kangaskhan returns. Special defense, I think, I'm not exactly sure actually why it was there, but just kind of helps out with general bulk. 116 special attack to get damage and 40 speed to speed creep on other Sylveons. The moveset was Hyper Voice, Shadow Ball, Helping Hand, and Protect. It's kind of your general use. You know, use Hyper Voice most of the time, but Helping Hand was really nice as well, and Protect ensured that you stayed around, excuse me, for a bit longer. So this is a spec set that I really like. I recently redid my EVs. This one has 92 HP, 116 normal defense, 252 special attack, and 48 speed. So this one still allows you to survive Kangaskhan return, but now you have max special attack, 48 speed just to speed creep other Sylveons even more. Moveset here is Hyper Voice, Shadow Ball, Psyshock, and Hyper Beam, though you could move it around. It actually makes some sense to have attacks like Helping Hand and Protect even on a spec set, because knockoff is actually really common on Sylveon. So I've actually had a game where I was running Helping Hand on my spec Sylveon, and I actually used it in the end to help out my Bisharp. So, you know, it's situational, it's dependent on your team. You're going to be using Hyper Voice almost all the time, but having those extra moves can really help out in key situations, you know, even if it's just one time. You may want to test around with the bit. They don't really matter that much, but in the off chance that they do, you know, you want the best moves to give you the chance of winning. So a couple of damage calculations just to show you. This is with the previous EV spread. Max Choice Specs Pixelate Hyper Voice is really nice because even against some of the most bulky Mega Kangaskhan's, you still it's still a guaranteed to hit KO despite the spread damage, which is absolutely incredible. I think that's a testament to how much damage Sylveon really does. So that's why I like Choice Specs over Life Orb. Mainly because you get basically ensure to hit KOs on anything that really doesn't resist the Hyper Voice. The defense for the previous spread, like I said, was maximized to survive Jolly Kangaskhan return. Of course, Admin Kangaskhan is getting more common, and Double Edge as well, so you may want to cater your EV spread to survive attacks like those. Now, even with no special defense investment, because of the natural 130, its natural bulk really comes through. You see here, Aegislash in Blade form with Flash Cannon, just with against 92 HP Sylveon, doesn't come that close to KOing it, brings it down to 89%, but at maximum, I think that's really impressive, and that's just really a testament to how specially defensive, bulky Sylveon is. So that's really nice. So, you know, just a general EV spread discussion. If you're interested in more bulk, you can always just take some EVs out of special attack, because of course you don't need 252, and that's kind of what the first spread did. You also don't really need speed investment. Sylveon's kind of in a weird speed tier where it really doesn't need to outspeed much, and you know, you really can't outspeed much unless you're putting a lot in, so you don't need to, but you might want to put in some just to speed creep other opposing Sylveon, since of course Sylveon is one of the most common Pokemon in VGC. You could also run Timid with a good amount of speed investment to outspeed the likes of Garchomp and Kangaskhan, but I should have mentioned, you need a Choice Scarf for that as well, so keep that in mind. However, by doing so, you do give up a lot of damage output since you're giving up on your nature and a lot of special attack investment, so keep that in mind. Sylveon's special attack is 110, which isn't absolutely amazing, so you are sacrificing a fair amount for that speed. In general, I would tend to go with Modest, but the speed could be really nice just to catch Pokemon off guard. You know, I was running a Modest, just a Choice Scarf on the first Modest set, the SITRUS set, for a while, and that was just kind of nice just to outspeed Bisharp. I think that can really change matchups around a lot, but keep in mind you're not really outspeeding that much if you're running mediocre speed and not much speed investment. But basically, you can move EVs from special attack and speed to the defenses to survive stronger attacks, because Jolly Kangaskhan return isn't exactly the strongest physical type attack out there. However, keep in mind that you're probably not going to be surviving the more common steel type attacks like Iron Head from Bisharp and Mawile. So you got to play carefully, but that kind of goes into the teammates that you pair Sylveon with. So good partners here. Sylveon fits really well into almost any team because of its natural bulk and, you know, fairy typing, but it really likes partners that can beat steel types. So fire type Pokemon like Charizard Y, I can think of a couple of other like Arcanine, Rotom Heat, Entei, those are really great. Mega Kangaskhan is one of the most common partners for Sylveon right now because it counters Bisharp really hard. You get fake out pressure right from the start, so those two synergize really, really well. And Pokemon that counter popular fire types as well, because fire types actually counter or annoy Sylveon a good amount. But just for reference, here are the top 10 partners currently on Battle Spot doubles. They're Kangaskhan, Landorus T, Talonflame, Bisharp, Thundurus, Aegislash, Salamence, Rotom Wash, Heatran, and Charizard Y. So, you know, if you're running out of ideas on what you might want to put with Sylveon, those are just a couple to get you jump started. But like I said, Sylveon fits really well into almost any team. But you should base your set, for example, Specs or SITRUS, you know, whether you're running Helping Hand or not, based off the rest of your team. So how do you beat it? Steel types are excellent. You got Bisharp, Metagross, Heatran, Mega Mawile, Ferrothorn, just to name a few. Physical type attackers in general are great. I think Mega Kangaskhan's fantastic, especially with Double Edge and Adamant that almost always one-hit KOs most Sylveons. Fire type in Pokemon also really annoyed, so Charizard, Y, Talonflame, Arcanine, just to name a few. Amoonguss can actually take Hyper Voices really well and just put it to sleep. Another one that I actually forgot to write down was Wide Guard, mainly because it just completely shuts down Hyper Voice, so any Pokemon with Wide Guard definitely helps out a lot. I actually realized that I did not mention Aegislash in how to beat it, so Aegislash is a great one as well, and it gets access to Wide Guard, so it's definitely one you should look for. The goal is to basically KO Sylveon before it does too much damage to your team. It is really strong, but you can normally KO it, in two or three attacks. So try to get rid of it before it gets too many boosted Hyper Voices off, because against Pokemon that don't resist it, it does a lot of damage regardless of the item it holds. If you see it in Team Preview, make sure your leads can check it reasonably well. So in conclusion, Sylveon is currently one of the most popular Pokemon in the format, and you shouldn't expect this to change, so make sure your team has ways to prepare for it. 99% of the time, like I said, Sylveon's going to be using Hyper Voice. The other 1% is going to be using the rare moves like Hyper, Beam, Quick Attack, Helping Hand, etc. Though those aren't as rare, they're very situational, but they're also very predictable. I think Sylveon's one of the more predictable Pokemon in the format, but you should still know how to beat it, because regardless of whether you see it coming or not, it's still going to pump out a lot of damage. Specs Hyper Voice, like I said, is one of the most powerful attacks in the game, but even non-boosted Hyper Voice damage racks up, so you gotta be careful, because it's still doing like 30 to 40% minimum to anything that doesn't resist it, even without a boosting item. But remember that it's relatively slow, so you can outspeed it with almost any Pokemon. Most of the common Pokemon like Bisharp, Landorus T, Kangaskhan, just to name a few, do outspeed it, so keep that in mind. Try to eliminate it as soon as possible, and if you see it in Team Preview, make sure you bring at least one Pokemon that can resist Fairy type attacks. In general, you should probably make sure that your leads can beat it too, because for example, if you lead two Pokemon that can't resist Hyper Voice, you're already in a pretty rough position because it can just put out a lot of damage right from the start. So that's why when I see Sylveon in my opponent's team, I assume that one of the two Pokemon my opponent's leading with is going to be that Sylveon, so I make sure to bring at least one way to cover it pretty big. Anyway, that's it for this analysis, guys. I hope it helped out a lot. I know a lot of you guys have requested Sylveon, so I gave you my take on it. I think the EV spreads will give you a good starting point just to, try it around. Of course, you should feel free to mess around with it and the moveset and the item, whatnot. But yeah, I hope this guide helped, guys. Anyway, that's it for this one. Please leave a like if you thought it was helpful and you enjoyed it, and as always, leave your feedback as well. If you have not watched the other analyses, definitely check those out. And yeah, that's it for this video, guys. I'll see you next time. Peace.